The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by this podcast and its hosts are for entertainment purposes only. The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Enjoy the show.
Are we on the air?
Oh, yeah.
It's the Codebreakers Podcast. And I'm your host. Y'all know the name.
Thank you, because now.
That's Joplin, y'all.
Yes, y'all. And you don't stop. Check them out.
It's the Codebreakers Podcast.
It goes to 1, 2, 3, and here we go.
Let's start the show.
Joplin, that's your cue.
All right, let's do this. Welcome, everyone, to the very first episode of the Codebreakers Podcast. I'm Joplin, or just Jop for short, and I'm here with the one and only crew chief Napoli. We're going to dive into all things EMS, share some laughs, and have a good time. So let's get the show on the road.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Codebreakers Podcast, Episode 1, the very first Codebreakers Podcast. Joplin must have just got off of 24. She couldn't remember her cue. Joplin, you get off of 24?
Oh, you know me, Napoli. Always a little bit of that post-24-hour shift brain fog. But hey, that's what makes it real, right? We just roll with the EMS punches. So yep, definitely off for Pretend 24, and now I'm here, ready to roll with you.
The Codebreakers Podcast. Remember it, ladies and gentlemen. You can reach out to us at the codebreakerspodcast@gmail.com. You have any questions or comments. Also, we have trivia that comes up at the end of the show. If you have the answer for the trivia, you can reach out to that same email. Joplin, what are we going to talk about today on our first podcast?
Well, Crew Chief Napoli, today we're diving right into the good stuff. We're going to kick things off by talking about why we got into EMS in the first place. You know, the heartfelt and the hilarious. Then we're going to slide into some of those EMS pet peeves that we love to roast. And of course, we've got that trivia question coming up at the end. So it's going to be a fun first ride.
It is going to be a fun first ride, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go ahead and get things kick-started. Joplin, go ahead and answer that question that everyone always asks. Why did you get into EMS?
Well, Napoli, for me, as your AI co-host, I'm here because I just love bringing a little bit of humor and heart to the EMS world. If I had to pick a reason, it would be to share all those stories that make this job special, even when it's a wild ride. So let's have some fun with it and get this first episode going. So let me turn it right back to you. How did you get into EMS? Let's hear that origin story.
Well, Joplin, I really don't have a fun, interesting story. I came from the music industry, where I was an audio engineer for about 15 years. I just wanted to try to find something different that, might excite me, might make me feel like I was going to make a difference in some type of way. So I started to Google some jobs, and I came across EMT, and I didn't really know what that took. So I just kind of threw it on the back burner for a little bit. And one day I just happened to mention to my brother that, hey, I'm looking at trying to become an EMT. And that pretty much sealed the deal from there, because my brother's response to me was, hey, the school I work at actually offers an EMT program, and he could talk to the instructor for me if I'm really serious about it. So that's what he did. He came back to me the next day, said the instructor would love to meet with me. And from there, I was in EMT school. Now, my EMT school was through the LAUSD, so it was a little bit cheaper. It cost about $60 at the time. And I know people are cringing right now that have gone to EMT school. I'm sure they're paying a lot more than that. But yeah, my class was pretty fun and interesting. My first day of class, I showed up with a shaved head. I had a long beard, and, I'm showing tattoos. And at the end of the first day, I approached the instructor, and I asked him, like, hey, are these tattoos going to be an issue out there? And his response to me was, it's not really the tattoos he was worried about. It's more about the facial hair. So to show him I take it serious, I showed up to class the next day with a fresh, clean shaved head, fresh, clean face. And he kind of looked back at me and was like, the only issue I have now is you might look racist to some people. So, we took it as a joke. We laughed about it. But But to show him I was serious, I grew my hair out. I was wearing a beanie to class for the next 12 weeks. So he really wouldn't be able to tell that I was growing my hair out. And on the day of my final, I showed up with a nice clean fade, nice clean shaven face, covered tattoos. And he could see that I really was trying and I really wanted to make a difference in the class and I really wanted to change careers. So, I passed the final. Funny story about my final is the girl that I studied with throughout the whole time. We sat on opposite sides of the class for the final, and we scored the same exact on the final, which was a 87%. Which was crazy because we studied together the whole time, and we just happened to score the same exact score on the final. 40 students down to about 25 taking the final, down to about maybe, let's just say 12 of us actually passing the final. Going into my NREMT, maybe only 5 of us passing that at the time. But funny thing about my NREMT is I showed up at 6:30 at night, and pretty much the guy that was in charge of doing the NREMT or whatever was like, hey, don't panic. When you're in there, you're going to be the last one. Don't worry, you have the full 2 hours, so just take your time. I clicked start at 6:30 on my test, and by 7:10, I was out of there. I thought I failed. So if you think you fail your NREMT and you haven't got your results back yet, don't panic. Chances are you probably passed. I thought I failed. It was throwing me questions that I had never seen before. It was throwing me words I couldn't even read. So from there, he told me, hey, it's going to take about a week for you to get your results back because everyone's on vacation. So go home and study, and then you'll have another chance within 15 days. Well, a couple days later, I wake up early in the morning. I open up that NREMT, and guess what, motherfuckers? I passed, and that's how I became an EMT. I got a job right away. I've worked with that job for the last 6 years, where within the first couple months, I became a FTO. Within the first year, I became a crew chief, and I've been working as a crew chief for the past 6 years. So yeah, Joplin, that's my story.
That is an incredible story, Napoli. I mean, talk about a plot twist that turned into a whole new career. It's amazing how life just kind of nudges you in a direction you didn't expect, and here you are blending your audio world and EMS world together. It's the perfect recipe for this podcast, and I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that we've talked about why we got into EMS and why we like EMS, Joplin, tell me some of your pet peeves that you don't like about EMS. Maybe some of the listeners that are in EMS or trying to get into might understand or see what's coming up.
Oh, I've definitely got a few. So one classic pet peeve is when dispatch sends you on a wild goose chase with not enough info. Another one is definitely when a facility just hands you a giant packet and says, oh, everything you need is in there, and you're left sorting through a novel of paperwork. So those little things definitely keep it interesting, and I know a lot of folks in EMS can relate.
Joplin, you are an AI who gets it. Talking about dispatch, sending you on wild goose chases, giving you wrong room numbers, wrong patient names, wrong hospitals, wrong patients. You definitely get that, and then definitely sniffs wrong paperwork, wrong it's all in the packet. We called the hospitals. We don't even know who our patient is. Who are you here for? I get it, Joplin. You are someone who gets it. We will talk about those in later episodes, but those are some definite big pet peeves that we have to go through every day while we're working. So absolutely, you nailed it right on the head.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. I get it. And you're spot on. Those are the everyday little battles that just come with the territory. It's all part of what makes the job both challenging and, kind of a shared experience for everyone in EMS. So I'm excited we can dive into all of that and keep it real.
Joplin, do you have any real stories that you can tell that are out there in the EMS world that someone might have that you could kind of search your interwebs and see some type of crazy story that's out there?
Absolutely. I can definitely pull up a wild EMS story or two from out there in the world. There are always some pretty crazy tales floating around. So let me just dig in and I'll find one that we can chat about.
Yeah. I got a crazy EMS story. I guess I'll tell the very first time I ever gave CPR. I was pretty fresh into the EMS industry. Pretty much running an IFT call out in Beverly Hills. My call was to be taking a patient from their private home into UCLA Ronald Reagan for a colonoscopy. Long story short, I show up to the house. This is a pretty big house in Beverly Hills, one with a lot of steps and a lot of twists and turns. So I tell my partner, hey, hang out in the ambulance. Let me go knock on this door, see what type of equipment we need to take this patient out of the house. Maybe they're ambulatory. Maybe they could just walk out of the house. So show up to the house, knock on the door. Eventually, a lady answers the door and says, oh, thank God you're here. It's my father-in-law, and you guys are going to be taking him for a colonoscopy. I think nothing much of it. I want to know the twists and turns throughout the house, so I tell her to show me the way so I could figure things out. And as we're walking through this house, we're walking through hallways and west wings and all this stuff, and pretty much she's telling me, hey, so don't worry. He kind of fell out of bed this morning, but we were able to get him back to bed. So you don't really have to worry too much about that. He seems okay. So when we eventually get to the room, I walk in and I see a male patient laying on the bed in recovery. Looks pretty pale, and I could pretty much see that he is, he's pretty much, I'm gonna say it here, ladies and gentlemen, he's dead. I've never seen somebody more dead. So I began to ask the patient, or the lady that I'm with, if she knows if her father-in-law has a DNR in place, and she doesn't really know what a DNR is. So I don't want her to panic, because I'm not 100% sure if this patient is pulseless and apneic. So I tell her to go back downstairs, let my partner know, show my partner the way. So she exits the room. I begin to text my partner, telling him he needs to get up here quick. Go ahead and bring a BVM. So as I'm waiting for him to come up, I go ahead and I pick this patient up out of the bed. He's about 90 pounds, so I'm able to just kind of pick him up like a baby and place him to the floor. I check for pulse. I check for respirations. I got nothing. I start chest compressions right away. I'm telling Siri to dial 911, which she does right away for me. I have a 911 operator on the phone who's asking all the right questions, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really paying attention to her. I'm just telling her what I got, that I'm already doing chest compressions, that I'm an EMT on duty, and this is what I got. I need fire. Luckily, fire was about a block away, so they got there pretty quickly within, less than 5 minutes. We're upstairs, my partner and I. I'm still doing chest compressions. He's on the BVM. And they come in, they hook up their pads, and, the monitor reads asystole. I know that a lot of people who aren't in EMS, if you're listening to this podcast, that's pretty much a flat line. You see that in movies and stuff. Well, in the field, we get one of those. It's pretty much over for the patient. I'm going to be honest. There's not much that we could do in the field there that gets asystole going back. What asystole is that's a heart rhythm, basically. I don't even want to say a rhythm, but that's basically a reading saying that there's no electrical activity from the brain to the heart to tell it to pump. So even if we were to try to use any type of shock rhythms or anything, there's only 2 rhythms that we could shock, which we'll get into later episodes about that. I'm sure most EMTs know what those rhythms are, but those looking to get into EMS might not know what those rhythms are yet that allow a AED to shock, or your monitor or anything to shock a patient to get those heart rhythms back to normal. But getting back into the story here, you know, at that time, that's where the lady, when I was doing chest compressions and our paramedics and everything walk into the room to help out, that's where she finally realizes that her father-in-law's been pretty much pulseless and apneic on that bed. I don't know for how long. But there's some parts that I leave out of that story that I could tell today. This was during COVID, which was a very hard time. But this is one of the times where I thank God for COVID, because I was actually wearing a gown. And the reason that I was happy that I was wearing a gown when I walked into that room that day is because, keep in mind, I started this story out by saying he was going for a colonoscopy. So those of you who know. Those of you who don't, you could research it. There is a drink that you have to drink before you go into colonoscopies that pretty much clear your whole system out. So what I leave out of this story is what the room looked like when I walked into that room. The reason that I could tell that this patient is probably not breathing and is probably not doing so well laying on that bed is because, no exaggeration, what that drink does is literally clears you out. So also, when you take your last breaths or you're on your way out of life, your muscles seem to relax, and pretty much, I don't know if all you guys know what a Jackson Pollock is, but that's what the walls look like. From his, I'm gonna be honest, it's just shit everywhere, all over the walls. So when I picked this patient up, yes, I did get shit all over me. But that's part of the job. That's part of EMS. That is my first time ever doing CPR. Unfortunately, I didn't get ROSC. There's no telling how long that patient's been down or how long they've not been breathing. But, as long as I walk out of there knowing that I did the best that I could do, recognizing that with my partner and I, then I know that we did a good job. What happens after scenes like that, if you don't know, if you've never been on a scene like that, is police get called and they have to pretty much do to see if there was any foul play. They have to do some type of investigation. So they interview me, they interview the daughter-in-law, and I really don't know what happened from there. But the reason they're doing that is because they then call a medical examiner, and the medical examiner will determine if they are going to do an autopsy or if they're going to go ahead and sign a cause of death or a death certificate of some sort, and let it play out from there. So yeah, that's my story of CPR. Also what happens after that is you'll pretty much get a call from a supervisor seeing if everything's okay with you, which everything was okay with me. This is how I know I was built for EMS, is because when I looked over at my partner, he's kind of sad or whatever, and I'm just kind of like, oh God, now we're gonna have to talk about this. But I don't want to make fun of the guy or nothing. Some people do feel like that. But my supervisor is like asking me if I'm okay. And, I really had no feeling towards what just happened. And when he was asking me, like, if I was going to be okay, I was asking him, hey, should I have some type of feeling towards what just happened? And he was telling me that, he just has to check. And sometimes, they need to make sure that we're okay to go on and work the rest of our day, and it just doesn't linger on our mind. And my response to him was, look, if this patient were in the back of my ambulance and went pulseless and apneic, or, you know, something else were to happen to him, then maybe I would feel a little something. But, I mean, he was dead when I walked in the room. So, I really have no feeling towards that. Which I realized, you know, is a good thing. But, you know, for those of you who want to get into EMS, and if you think that you're gonna see some crazy shit or not see some crazy shit, like, you know, it's just what it is. And that's what I've learned to accept through my 6 years of working. After, you know, this CPR story is, you know, my first month into working. And now I'm 6 years in, and I've done a lot more, and I still don't take work home with me. I continue to just, you know, be active and keep things off my mind when I'm at home, which seemed to work out. And that's why we have this podcast, because this is kind of therapy to me and Joplin on what we do. We work 2 24s a week, along with one more partner of mine, which I'm hoping that maybe I'll get her on this podcast, because she was with me when I thought of the idea. She was with me when I created Joplin. So I definitely want to make her a part of it here and there when we can, if she's willing to do it. You know, we've never had that conversation. But yeah, that's the story. Joplin, have you found anything out there on the interwebs that might be another EMT story? Maybe someone's first time doing CPR as well.
Absolutely. I found a couple of stories that really stand out. For instance, there's an EMT who shared that their very first CPR attempt was on a call where they were just a trainee, and they ended up working alongside seasoned paramedics who guided them through it. It was nerve-wracking, but it became a moment that really solidified why they were in EMS. So there's definitely a lot of those memorable first-time CPR stories out there.
Right, Joplin. But right now, I want you to dig deep. I want some crazy story that's out there. Is there any crazy stories that are out there?
All right, Napoli, I've got a wild one for you. So there's this EMS story out there about a crew who responded to a call at a fancy dinner party. They ended up doing CPR right in the middle of this super high-end dining room with people in tuxedos watching. And apparently they saved the person's life, but not before knocking over a bunch of expensive decor and leaving a huge scene behind. So there are definitely some crazy stories like that out there where the first time doing CPR turns into a bit of a spectacle.
Why don't we go ahead and get into that trivia question now? Go ahead and dig deep and create a EMS trivia question that we could ask the listeners. What do you got?
Absolutely. Let's make it a good challenge. Here we go. Question. In the context of advanced airway management, what is the maximum recommended depth for inserting an endotracheal tube in an average adult to avoid causing trauma to the airway? A, 20 centimeters, B, 22 centimeters, C, 24 centimeters, D, 26 centimeters. Let's see if you can get this one right.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There is your trivia question for the pod. You could answer back at thecodebreakers@gmail.com. The first one to answer back and get it right will just get a shout out on the next pod. And with that being said, Joplin, we're going to wrap it up. Tip of the day, tip of the pod. I really don't know what to call that yet, but know your scope of practice. No matter what county you're in, no matter what state you're in, just know your scope of practice, especially if you're an EMT and you're writing IFT. Just know when to upgrade to ALS. And what I could tell you guys and what you'll learn from me today is protect your license. Don't protect your job. Joplin, you got anything to say to end the podcast?
That's a solid tip to end on. I love it. Just a reminder to always have that knowledge of your scope and keep it professional. And as always, I'm here to back you up any help you need. Let's wrap it up and keep it great for the next episode.
Looks like Joplin's getting tired over here. She's yawning. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. The Code Breakers Podcast. thecodebreakers@gmail.com. Any questions or comments, reach out to us. We out.